What is up, Partner Up? We're back. Isaac, I was just telling you, I haven't podcasted since PLX, but even then, PLX was such a blur that I feel like we haven't done this in far too long. I'm glad to be back on the regular Partner Up cadence.
Yeah, Will replaced you. You might not have even known this, but I don't know, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, we did an episode. But
yeah, he did.
Yeah, but Will was there instead. He did a suitable job replacing you, Jared. I don't know. Maybe you should be concerned. I'm not sure.
Hold on, wait a second. You said in Slack that he did a fantastic job, and then you just said pretty good, and then you're already down to suitable. So I need to go listen to that one and do some quality control.
I don't want to scare you too much before we jump into recording another episode. So I got to keep your confidence high.
I'm really excited for our guest today because, gosh, Kathleen Booth. Kathleen, how far do we go back? We go back to Impact? PandaDoc?
Yeah, I mean, it was when you were at Drift many moons ago.
No, I think PandaDoc even.
Oh, you're right. Yes.
Because I remember it was before I even started at Drift. Elias and DC were like, come to the office and come talk to some handful of partners that may want to do some stuff with Drift. And I believe you were there. That was whenever the office was in the mall.
Oh my gosh. We're going back into deep history here.
TLDR is that we've been in the partnerships arena somewhat together on like either side. So Kathleen, I think why I'm so excited to talk to you today, the perspective that you bring is that you've been on the agency side partnering up, with like Impact and HubSpot. You've been on the tech company side partnering kind of like with a wider ecosystem. And now, ecosystem is the combination of partnering and partnerships and community, and then the content and media between. Now you're the marketing leader, as of October, the new CMO, SVP marketing of Pavilion, the biggest paid community in all of B2B.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I have to be honest. I've been a member at Pavilion. I was there for 3 years as a member before I joined full time, and it's been really fun to come in-house and be a part of it.
So maybe we start there. Why did you decide to go? I mean, it feels like a community is like, okay, that's like a niche thing that maybe some startup entrepreneur people would do. I wouldn't see a seasoned marketing leader, at least last year. I mean, now I'm like, of course, brilliant move by Kathleen. But let's just suspend disbelief for a second and be like, why would you go as a seasoned marketing leader to help grow a community versus a business, a SaaS company, or an agency?
It's really funny that you asked this, because when I was interviewing at Pavilion, I was also being recruited for some other companies, and I was in very late stage talks with I would characterize it as a late stage Series B stage tech company, and they were private equity funded. The recruiter who I was talking with, like I was going into the last like presentation to the leadership team and the board kind of stage, and I pulled out to take this job, and the recruiter was like, like you're going to an association? Like, I suppose after this job, you could take a job with a trade association because you live near Washington, DC. And I was like, no, that's not exactly what this is. So like, it is a totally different play. You're right. And I think to those who maybe like, especially somebody who doesn't know Pavilion, I think it could seem like that. But, the thing about me is that starting really actually back in my Impact days, I became very passionate about community as a strategy. And back then I was thinking about it more as part of I would say a larger play where B2B brands needed to start thinking of themselves as media companies. And I actually gave a talk at Inbound about this is the next evolution for a lot of the types of brands that people like me and others work for. And this was before HubSpot bought The Hustle, before Stripe bought Indie Hackers. And to Bob Ruffalo's credit, he's the owner of Impact. He saw this, was inspired by Joe Pulizzi's books, Content Inc. and Killing Marketing. And so when I came into Impact, what he really charged me with was this building of the media company.
That's a new book alert, by the way. I got to just call that out. New book alert. I actually have not heard that one. I'm literally writing that down right now.
There's two different books. One is two different books, both by Joe Pulizzi, who was the founder of the Content Marketing Institute. One's called Content Inc., INC, and the other is Killing Marketing. And Killing Marketing is about this. It's brilliant, actually, because what he talks about is marketing has always been seen as a cost center. And so in times like we're living in right now, right? What's the first thing you cut when something is a cost center? You cut marketing. And the book Killing Marketing was about reframing the discussion and seeing that marketing can actually become a profit center for the business if you approach it with this media mindset, where you're not just marketing in service of selling a product, you're marketing in service of building a large and loyal audience. And then when you have a large and loyal audience, there are so many different ways you can monetize that through partnerships, through sponsorships or ad sales. But also having large and loyal audiences enables you to effectively have a customer base to sell into for new products. And so this is something I became really interested in at that time and have studied a lot and like worked on over the years. And it's not every B2B company that's going to give you the leash to go and do this. And then the last thing I'll say about this is, like, most B2B companies, you think about HubSpot, right? They start out as B2B technology companies or whatever it is they're selling. And then they might realize they need to move into this like media community mindset, but that's an evolution for them. But there are companies that come at it from the other direction, that start as communities and then move more into having products. And you see it more in the B2C world. So if you think about somebody like Gwyneth Paltrow, she started Goop as a blog. So she had this media property. She started to build a community. Today, if you look at Goop, it's an e-commerce company. She's like, I have all these people who are ready to buy anything I'm going to sell them, including crazy things like jade eggs. And, she just started introducing new products. And it's the same thing with like Chip and Joanna Gaines at Magnolia. They started out with a TV show that had an audience, and now they have tons of companies that sell everything from paint to rugs to baked goods. So I think we're going to see this more on the B2B side. We've seen the evolution from tech company to media company / community, but Pavilion to me is that next evolution, which is what started as a community will become more like a tech company. And that's what I was like, ooh, I want to be a part of that, because that's the next step, the next evolution in the world of B2B.
This is so good. That's like mic drop clip right there. No, what you're saying, Jared and I have been talking about this and excited about this. It's almost like if you build trust, you can gain users pretty easily of a product. If you build a product, gaining trust is actually really, really hard, right? So like, which one do you want to build first? And they can come together, right? You can build trust through a product that you let people use, but there's a lot of ways to build trust. If you ask that question, like, okay, before I go try to sell something into a market, how do I build trust? What's the best way to do that? And there's a lot of different approaches, but asking that is kind of because the point you made, like Chip and Joanna Gaines and all these examples, people buy their stuff because they trust them. They trust them as, personalities, people who have created value for them, brought something to their lives. And they know, okay, well, if their name's on it, I trust it's going to be good. So I have one just like sort of thought, but then I have a question. So the thought is, this is kind of like a radical idea. I mean, I'm not saying that everyone should do this, but imagine if you are a, typical B2B company. What if you went to your marketing department and said, as a thought experiment, hey, imagine you got no budget and all the money that you wanted to use for activities, you have to earn through things that you're selling to people outside of the company, right? So like now you're a media company. Okay. You want money to run something? Go sell sponsorships to the events that you're putting on. Go get partners to partner with you on your blog. Now that's not necessarily the right strategy in every instance, but when you ask that question, what if I was forced to do that? Sometimes those kind of constraints, those thought experiments can open you up to some possibilities that you didn't consider before, that there's ways to fund marketing activities that don't just come from getting budget allocated from elsewhere in the company. And I think that's kind of like this marriage of media and product company. I don't even remember what my other point was going to be. I was going to ask you a question, but now I got lost in my monologue.
No, you're totally right. And it's like first principles thinking, right? Like if we forgot everything we knew about marketing, would we build it differently going forward? And I do think there's so many interesting lessons to be learned from outside of the world of marketing. And this is a failing of us as an industry, if you will, that we like all tend to think along these same lines with using the same rubrics of this is how marketing is done. But I drew the parallel to media. The other interesting media parallel is if you look into like certain types of media businesses, the other thing I've been fascinated by studying is the difference between like subscription and membership. And so subscription businesses, which is really what B2B SaaS is, are businesses where somebody pays you regularly, and in response, they expect to regularly derive value from what they're paying for. So as soon as they stop deriving value, they're going to churn. And that is a hamster wheel, right? Like, you're constantly like, how do we prove that we're giving them what they paid for? Versus a membership, which membership you regularly pay for, just like you do with a subscription, but you don't expect to regularly derive value. And the reason is that there's a psychological difference between the two. And with membership, you're joining something. The act of joining, as opposed to buying, is about being a part of something that's larger than yourself. And so the parallel I would draw here, that's an interesting story, is the Washington Post. So many years ago, when I lived in Washington, D.C., I subscribed to the Post, and I subscribed. I was like, I want to read the news, right? And I got busy. And as soon as I was too busy to read the Post every time I got it, I was like, I can't keep paying for this. I'm not reading it. Fast forward, and years later, the Post introduced this new tagline, "Democracy dies in darkness." And it was right around the time of the elections. And I was like, yes, I totally believe in this. I want to be a part of supporting this. I'm going to join as a part of the Washington Post community. And I resubscribed. But I'll tell you what, I very rarely have time to read that newspaper now. And I will not give up my subscription, because it's not about regular value. It's about being a part of something bigger than myself. And so this is where, when we, to go back to our original point of community and the power it holds for B2B, the reason that community and this media approach have such power in terms of their ability to change the future of B2B tech, B2B SaaS, is that if you really want to develop customers for life, if you really want that passion and you want to increase retention, it has to, I think at some point, it has to go beyond simply delivering value through the product. It needs to be about creating something that's bigger than the product. And that's what, to me, that's what Pavilion's doing really well right now. We have this mantra of kind folks finish first. Sam Jacobs wrote a book. It's now a Wall Street Journal bestseller. And so it's not just a community where we come to network. It's a community where we come to network. And by the way, we're about transforming the way business is done and getting rid of this notion of the toxic workplace and training and educating people as to how they can play a part in that kind of a future. That's the sort of thing that if you can bake that into B2B, you will become unstoppable.
How do you define community?
Ooh, that is such a good question. I didn't know I was going to get quizzed like this. So community, to me, there's different shades of it, right? I mean, community is a very organic thing. And I personally, when I see a community that I think is really successful, it's where it has several traits to it. Number one, there is some higher purpose or higher cause or higher mission that brings people together. There is a grassroots element to it of self-organization. I've been in a lot of communities. The successful communities, the ones that really have staying power, are the ones where the members step in and participate in community management, where they are policing each other, where they're organizing. Community can't be entirely top down. It has to also be bottom up and also horizontal. So, and there needs to be shared values. I think if you have those three things, a higher purpose, shared values, and self-organization, that to me, those are the magic elements of a great community.
I ask because I've been thinking about this a lot myself. And it's one of those things where we all know community is valuable. We all sort of know it when we see it, when we experience it, but it's very hard to define sometimes. Yeah. And especially because I think what often happens is it's easy to let the tools and tactics kind of become the definition by default. So if in the modern, sort of B2B context, if you hear, oh, you should join X community, the first thing you think of is, oh, a Slack group, right? You think in terms of the tool, right? And that's not bad. That's part of it. That's one of the media, but I was trying to think of when, Jared and I were talking a lot about the partner ecosystem, sort of the community of people who are in the partnerships world. If I think of that community, it doesn't live on a single Slack group. It's on there's conversations that take place on Slack groups. It's on LinkedIn. It's in some Zoom events. It's in some in-person events. It's in emails and DMs. And so I was trying to think of what is it that could I put a core definition to it? And to me, it feels like it's more about conversations, that shared conversations, which is kind of another way of saying those shared values, to your point, where people are talking about the same things and they're interested in these same conversations. And whoever sort of rallies around to those, whether informal or formal, that's kind of your community. And what's cool when you use that conversations word is you start to think beyond the medium. You're like, okay, conversations are happening simultaneously in Slack groups and on LinkedIn and on this podcast. And and it's like, it's got this nebulous thing. You can't draw a clean line around it, but it's more like to use a mathematical analogy, it's more like a centered set than a closed set. It's not like you're in or out of a community. It's like you're closer to the center or further from the center, something like that.
Yeah, it goes back to my point about self-organization. Like, you can try to dictate the shape of a community. And, we do have like a headquarters team, but a community really doesn't come together until it starts to organize itself. And to your point, like, those conversations can happen in a lot of different places, but that's the community organizing and taking initiative to make things happen.
Yeah. I mean, look at all the manifestations that just in the consumer life. Like, if you go back to, the mid 2000s, I can't tell you how many communities that I was a part of that manifested in the face of like a forum, from everything from square body pickup trucks, right? So like, it was all people that were obsessed with like Chevy square bodies, right? It's just like, that was the community. And like, that's all the stuff that we talked about. And it was like from a hobby perspective. So I think that's like one vector. And then there's this other vector where it's like, no, I want to die on that hill. Like, it's a movement, right? So like political things, right? Where people are going out and they're organizing, not just like truck meetups or shows, right? Like, hey, let's go show off, the cool, there's going to be a truck show here, at this place, and then sharing pictures and stuff. But like, this candidate must be defeated at all cost, right? Like, there's something to be said by this very organic way by which we associate around this shared interest, right? So like, from hobby to like, our lives are on the line, from Washington Post to, Pavilion join today. I actually really liked what you said, Kathleen, on the difference between like the buy button versus the join button. Gosh, it's so good. I mean, the from politics to hobbies to business, I mean, politics themselves, one of my favorite things is that, the most motivating force in politics is moral outrage. Like, that is Morton Blackwell's, I think it's the second rule of politics. There's like 50. And it's so true. Like, people will organize, just look at politics today. It's part of the reason for the problem is that like, people are so mad and they want to galvanize around something that's like anti, right? But at the same time, that almost lacks the organization. Like, it's motivating, but then it's gone, right? Like, think about how angry we are about things and how fleeting it is. Like, the news cycle is just like so fast. And what I'm starting to see is these more nuanced, harder conversations and like really understanding develop into these much bigger, longer tail things like Pavilion. Like, I know members that have been members for years. How long have you been a member of Pavilion?
Since the fall of 2019.
Yeah, it's fall of 2019. So I mean, you're going on three plus years.
Yeah.
That's longer than a campaign cycle, right? Campaign cycle is like, 3 months. It's like, yeah, like, put up the yard sign. I'm team this, I'm team that. And now we're seeing these longer.
It's longer than the LTV of many B2B SaaS products.
Hey. So going back to my original question, like, why join a community? It's like, hey, look at the LTV of this membership versus subscription. You can sell subscriptions on top of it. I think it's fascinating. This is my way of learning out loud of coming to this point.
Customers churn faster than friends do. So there you go.
Oh yeah, there you go. There's a tagline. Well, I guess what I was coming around to is trying to wrestle with this concept of like, are we in a place where nuance and building like a longer tail community or that's less like flash in the pan motivated, where more in-depth conversations, deeper understanding facilitates these types of things? Like, what's your sense of that, Kathleen, in the wider kind of like zeitgeist, if you will? You've been a member of Pavilion for 3+ years. And yet at the same time, we have fast food information on Twitter where it's like, hey, here's this latest thing for us to all be mad about. And then it's gone in the next week.
Jared, don't get me started on Twitter. That's a whole nother podcast right now.
Right.
No, I think to answer your question, The word that really is the theme word for me around all of this is intimacy. There are a lot of places that we can go to connect with peers, right? Like I'm super active on LinkedIn and I love LinkedIn and it's one of my communities. And there are other places I go to, but I think for me, the thing that has stood out about Pavilion and that stands out about the other communities where I'm most active is the places that you love the most and the ones you always keep coming back to are the ones where you feel a sense of intimacy. And by that, I mean like a sense of closeness and certainly trust. Going back to the word we talked about earlier, trust is huge, right? LinkedIn is tough because you might feel like you have great relationships, but you don't have intimacy
Right.
because like anybody can see your updates unless you're really cagey about connecting and you have your profile settings. Like, I don't know who does that on LinkedIn, but like there isn't intimacy on LinkedIn. And unfortunately they destroyed LinkedIn groups years ago. So where do you go to find a place where you can really trust the people that you're surrounded by, where you can open up and have the vulnerable conversations, to your point, like to be able to like advance, to be able to learn, to be challenged, we have to be able to open up and be vulnerable. And finding places where that is possible is difficult in this day and age. And so I think to me, the best communities do that. And that is also why it comes back to my earlier point about shared values, because to be in a place of intimacy, a place of trust, you need to understand that there is some set of shared values underpinning the group of people that creates a space in which you feel safe opening up.
Maybe what I just pulled out of this, tell me what you think, Kathleen, is I feel like if I think about Pavilion or some of the other good communities, they almost feel like places I go to give, right? Like if I'm going into Pavilion and I see something and I see someone post something, my response, like I did this the other day, Isaac, you saw me like jump into a thread and like completely like, hey, here's exactly how you need to approach this data set. And this is what you need to do. No one thinks about this. The hardest part of this is sales management. Everyone tells you it's this. No, it's getting the managers bought in. And here's what you need to do about it. And it's this big, long rant. And people were like, oh my gosh, that was so helpful. But I didn't post that on LinkedIn, right? Like on LinkedIn, I'm practicing thought leadership or whatever. Like I'm like condensing my thoughts into, you got Ogilvy behind you. It's like, it's me practicing copywriting, right? LinkedIn for me is like, how can I take this idea and make it just like as polished as I possibly can? That's what I post on LinkedIn. But I'm not like answering like a step-by-step response to someone that I even follow. Like, hey, who can help me with this? It's almost like people aren't even asking those types of questions in depth, but those things do happen in a community. Maybe it's that. It's like community is a place where you go to give, but like LinkedIn's a place where you go to consume.
I think it's it's mutuality, right? Mutuality is what characterizes a great community, and not in the sense of like tit for tat or quid pro quo, like as in I help you, you help me. I mean, that does happen, but mutuality in the sense of we're all in this together, right? Like we're all in this together. We're all part of the same team. We're all on each other's side. And so we go in there, and when you're all on each other's side, we go to bat for each other. And yes, we do expect to get some value out of community, but going back to my original point, not in the sense of like every week, every month, I need to get value. It's like, I am in this with my team. These are my people. This is my tribe. And so of course, when I'm with my tribe, I'm going to like chime in and help people because, we all succeed together. And that's really what makes for the most beautiful form of community.
I want to go back to this, something you mentioned at the outset, changes in go-to-market, which are a big theme that we're always talking about here. We've kind of seen the, product-led growth become a big thing. Hey, you don't necessarily need a big sales and marketing team when you first start out. Just get your product out there, let people start using it, and, they'll get it out there. But now this sort of community-led approach where you may not even have a product yet, where you start with a community, right? And because like a lot of companies have known that community is a valuable tool. So it's like, okay, we build our product, we get some traction, we get some things going. And then how do we create a community around our product? How do we get our users to form a community or a broader interest, And that's, I think, much harder because you will always face a little bit of a trust hurdle. It can be overcome, but people will be like, yeah. You're a company, you're trying to form a community around your product. Like, nice try, right? Like, I mean, how many times have I got an email that's like, you should join our community for users. You're a user, and I'm like, so
that's a user group, not a community. Yeah,
exactly. And so this other approach, which we're starting to see trickle in, is very, very interesting, that people building communities that don't even have a product yet. And then they basically tease the product out of that community. Give me your prediction. Like, is this going to be a big thing, or is this always going to be sort of an exception to the rule?
Oh, I mean, let me change how let me rephrase the question. I don't know that it's ever going to be a big thing, because I don't think that many companies and leadership teams have the patience to do it this way and understand the value. But I think for those who do, it's going to be tremendously impactful. And we've already seen this in some cases. So like a great example out there in the wild, which probably lots of people on this podcast might be familiar with, is Rand Fishkin. So he was at Moz and he had a huge following, and then he left and he started a new business, but he didn't just like start the business and then introduce the product. He started out just building a community of followers. Like he started blogging and educating, and no mention of the product whatsoever. It was just about delivering value. And he built this audience, right? And it was months later, maybe even more than a year, that he finally introduced the product. And by the time he did that, everybody was like, gimme, I want it. You know, like, I trust you. You're great. I know what you're about. You've educated me. Like, I'm going to sign up. And that's a great example of somebody who's done this well. There are some folks doing this now with like Pure Signal. It is a great example.
I actually just saw a post from Adam over there where he was like, hey, you know, in case you didn't notice, when I announced that we're launching this product, I didn't tell anybody what the product is or what it does. Nothing in my post said that. And yet we got however many page views and however many signups. Why? Right? Because I built a community, and then I'm like, hey, everybody knows about this community and all these things we've been doing. Now we're going to roll that community into a product. And they're all like, cool. Yeah, I trust you. It's going to be a good product. Sign me up. I want to know, right? He's like, you didn't have to do any product marketing at all if you nail the community part.
Zero product marketing, literally zero product marketing.
Well, and to that point, I don't know if you saw Camille Trent's post. So she's their head of content and community. She actually had this amazing post, and I'm looking at LinkedIn right now to see if I can find it real fast. And because I want to read this. This is actually brilliant. And I don't even know her, but somehow we're connected.
Well, while you're looking for that, take a second to find it, because this just made me think of something.
I got it.
This is something. So like the NFT world is mostly silliness and garbage and a lot of scams and stuff, but there's something interesting that I've noticed.
What world, Isaac?
The NFTs, right? The world of NFTs, like digital monkeys and all this stuff. A lot of it's just crazy and goofy, but there's something interesting that I've noticed there. You get these communities around a particular project or artist or whatever, and they don't need any sort of product marketing. When someone says a new drop is coming on whatever date, they all go sign up, and they don't even know what it is. They don't know what it's going to look like. They don't know what they're bought in on a different level. They're bought in on a tribal level, and they just automatically are excited about whatever you're going to drop. And that's like an extreme example. It's not necessarily always manifest in a good way, but I think there's something in there.
No, you're right. I actually am an advisor to a company called GMGN Supply Company, which is a Web3 company. And their mission is to build 100 Web3 consumer packaged goods brands. And so the idea is you buy into the DAO, you get your NFT, which is your entrance into the distributed access organization, which is like a shareholder organization in Web3. And then they just released their first product, which is a chocolate bar, on-chain chocolate. And because I hold the NFT, I hold the token, I am a part owner of the business. And this is the first of 100 brands that I'll basically be a shareholder in. So absolutely great example. But going back to Camille's post, so her post said this: I'm no longer, and this is one day ago, I'm no longer a SaaS marketer. I'm the director of a B2B media company. Drawing this line was important to us. Here's how it works. Key Play data powers Pure Signal research. PureSignal.org community insights fuel Key Play. Pure Signal equals media. Key Play equals SaaS. We decided to separate the SaaS and media brands to incentivize the right behaviors. And like she goes on and on then to talk about it, but it's a great post and it's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, yes. So back to your question, Isaac, like, is this going to be a big thing? I don't know, because like it really is the long game, and B2B companies suck at playing the long game. They are very beholden historically to like, where's the next MQL going to come from? This doesn't lend itself to that. It is about investing upfront to build that audience, to build that trust. And then all of a sudden, yes, there's tremendous payoff. Like they're going to have a great growth story. I have no doubt, because they did that upfront work. They had the patience, but I just don't think everybody's going to be willing to do that until there are more investors that understand this and are willing to foot the bill for it. If that happens, then everything might change.
So there's three potential ways that companies can do this, right? Way number one is, hey, you're naturally good at building community and you do the full on Rand Fishkin model or the, pure signal model where you build a community first before you even have a product. Number two is you are a product company and you find a community that's already established and been built by somebody, and then you buy them. Number three is you maybe don't have the cash to buy them or you're not established enough, but you form a partnership, a deep partnership, a really not just like, hey, can we advertise in your community, but like a long-term, and maybe it turns into an acquisition down the road. But I wonder if we'll see more of that where it's like taking the kind of, okay, affiliate marketing with an influencer or whatever, and taking it a step deeper. Like, hey, we're not ready to like acquire this community, let's say, but what if we did like a really deep where we actually co-innovate a product together that's just for your community, or we, something like that, where you kind of marry these things in kind of an in-between. I don't know. I wonder if that will be a more common form that we start to see.
Oh, I think for sure. And I think we're already seeing it. I mean, at Pavilion, we do have a lot of actual partners that they've sponsored our community. But what's really very interesting about what we're seeing, and I think this is a little bit of the future, is we're really pushing our partners to become actual members as well. So like when we sell a partnership, we say to these companies, we're not going to just let you sponsor Pavilion. You need to sign whatever your go-to-market team up as members, because it doesn't work the same way if you're just doing webinars, if you're just putting your logo on our events. Like what works is your actual team members becoming a part of the community, building relationships at that grassroots level, and doing this organically in tandem with your partnership. Like that's the really powerful combination. And I think, we're probably one of the first communities to do this where it's really a requirement. But we see that they just will not be as successful if they don't take this approach. And so it's interesting to see like who's joining us in that journey, because I think they're some of the more innovative SaaS companies. Like, 6 Sense is a great example. They're a company that has awesome communities of its own, has seen what community can do for the business. And so they're all in. They're a partner, but they have their whole team enrolled. And that's where the power lies.
That's exactly how we've been thinking about the next phase of Partner Hacker. Is Partner Hacker was always about the crossing the chasm from my point of view, right? So like going back to, arguably the best marketing book of all time, it's all about who are the early adopters? Well, it's the people that are going to hack the partnerships, right? They're going to make it work. Like, hey, they're going to be creative and whatever. It's not going to go mainstream till it goes mainstream. And then we had this PLX summit, Kathleen, which shout out to Sam and your help there for getting him to keynote and close out the whole event. He did an awesome kind of like fireside chat with me to close out the PLX summit, which was really great, talking about his new book. But what we started to realize was like, we kind of have these different opportunities for each persona to like meet them where they are. So like marketing together, selling together, building together, serving together, right? And what we realized is like, oh shoot, each of these personas kind of needs something a little bit different. And it's not about partnering, it's about them together, right? So like the marketing function first, market together. So like Pete Caputa's story, who, Pete, having been a big HubSpot partner, of course, the data box story this year is incredible. They interviewed 10,000 people for the data box blog. Well, I've had this saying recently where I say trust comes from helping people reach their promised land. So it's like, hey, he has 5, John Bonini's a great marketer over there, but then generally, 4, 3 smallish, like kind of entry level-ish marketers. If you can't write something from the position of like, I've been to the place that you want to go, well, then you need to go talk to the people that have. And that's where community and media comes into play, and it gets really important. If, I did a kickoff the other day where I was talking to people that sell the CIOs. I was like, hey, how many people in the room have been a CIO? None of you? None of you have been a CIO. So what gives you the right to tell the CIO that you're the right person to help them get where you want to go? You got to bring the people that have been to the promised land that your customer wants to be, where they want to go, to them. That's the job today. I think community, media, et cetera. And I'm really interested in how we can do more of that even together, like Pavilion and Partner Hacker. And what will become our second phase is like this interoperability between, let's say, community and media. There are overlaps, they're similar, but they're also not quite the same. How do we help each other get to the other side? You know, so it's an interesting like premise to be like, if you haven't been to the place that you're telling your customers they need to go, who can you work with that has? I'd love your reaction to that, Kathleen.
The learning that happens in communities is so powerful. And I was just talking to somebody the other day about this, but like from a slightly different angle, which is that every B2B go-to-market leader I know, whether you're the CRO, the CMO, the chief customer officer, what have you, like everyone I know seems to have this deep-seated imposter syndrome. It's like, it's almost like the more experienced you get, the worse it is. And I think part of it is because when you reach that level of leadership, you're the only person filling that seat, you know, within the company. And so you don't have other people to go to, right? And you have this tremendous spotlight on you and a lot of pressure to deliver. And community is about like alleviating that fear that you don't know what you don't know, because that's what fuels imposter syndrome. You're like, God, not only am I scared I'm not good enough, but I don't even know what I'm missing, right? Like I don't even know I should be doing, you know, that meeting with my board or whatever. But you get into community and it's like osmosis. All of a sudden you're surrounded by people. You're not the smartest person in the room. You're able to absorb from others and you now do know what you don't know, right? Like, because you're a part of the conversations. You don't need to necessarily be like posting or talking or whatever, but you can just literally be observing and learning and soaking in. And that is so powerful, that peer-to-peer learning and insight that you can get. And to your point, Jared, it can be within one community or it can be two communities coming together. There's a lot of different ways to achieve that. But I think, you know, in B2B, it's a problem I see all over the place. People being scared that they just don't know.
Right. I want to tie this together real quick. Maybe this could be interesting. I feel like, let's take, I don't know, Modern Sales Pros, for example. So shout out Pete Kaczynski. I mean, I've been a member since day one, I think. I mean, not day one, but like early. Google Group has never really advertised beyond that, right? It's just a Google Group. And, you know, Pete's launched a product off the back of it, whatever. So like that's, at the beginning, those conversations were really interesting to me because forecasting, sales automation, CPQ, like there was a lot of tactical questions around, sales technology that no one had really used before, at least not done in a velocity way. Like the purpose was for creating sales velocity. Can we do this stuff faster? And this is no, I'm not throwing any shade at the group today, but all of the content has already been written now for that group. It's all been said. There's nothing new for me to read in Modern Sales Pros. Right. There's nothing new to read in Modern Sales Pros, like so to speak, right? Again, no shade there. There's up and comers and there's new people that need to read and ask new questions. But like as a vet now, I feel very out of place. Now, the only people that I see responding are like consultants, right? People that have done it like 50 times and they respond with their opinion. And, you know, that's probably how they get a lot of their business, right? In this other world where the content doesn't really exist. So let's take partnering or community or media, like how to build partnerships, community, media ecosystems in B2B. A lot of that content doesn't exist. So communities around these topics are very interesting because people are helping each other a lot. The conversations are very vibrant, but then the media company has a very similar opportunity in that we need to take these conversations, the social zeitgeist, and turn it into media assets, right? So it should be a surprise that like the handbook that we published was sold thousands and thousands of copies. Like we didn't even work with a publisher. This is self-published, like top selling book in marketing and sales. And it's an anthology, right? There's a lot of things going against this book. But here's my point. There wasn't much out there that had been aggregated in an authoritative way. There wasn't the guide. There's not the maturity model. There's not the blueprints. There's all this new content that needs to be created. And I feel like that's really the opportunity at the beginning of any change. Like the community has a different opportunity. The media company has a different opportunity, right? Like we're not facilitating, let's say, the social sense of connection, so to speak, the same way that you are, but we are building the content that's required to, let's say, do the job or to generate the interest or, convince X, Y, or Z person to go get budget, right? Or to make that shift or have that hard executive conversation.
It's almost, the constant process of bundling and unbundling that is always happening in the economy. You can see a sort of a microcosm of this in a community at the early stages of a community in a new category or around a new topic. It's a really big bundle. It's doing a lot of things. There's a lot of learning, a lot of knowledge documentation, a lot of ongoing conversations, a sense of belonging. All of these various things are happening. And then over time, as it matures, some of those start to get peeled off. So even within Pavilion, you've got conversations and events, but you also have this knowledge base that's like, hey, we're going to take the things that have been teased out of these sort of, asynchronous flowing conversations and make some of them, now they're sort of permanent chunks that are searchable, and they're it's a single source of, truth about certain things or a record, a database. And you're kind of peeling off that function. First, all that stuff just happens within conversations, and then it gets contentified, so to speak. And then that's one function of the community moves out, which is like, here's the timeless stuff, right? Here's the pinned stuff. And then there's these ongoing conversations with a sense of belonging. So you can kind of peel off some of these different functions and get them more specialized.
Well, if you go back to the concept of archaeology and communities, like if you think about community through an archaeological lens, that all makes sense, right? Because when archaeologists study community, they look at things like how are the rules of the community codified? How does the community transfer knowledge within itself, right? Like it's very much exactly what happens in B2B communities is what archaeologists studies. Like, are they documenting the rules and the regulations? Are they documenting the history? How is that passed down? How does like gossip happen? How are stories told? Like it's all those same we that we study in archaeology that apply in B2B communities. We just don't think about it that way because we're like you said, it's like we're on Slack, we're creating guru cards, we have a wiki, we might have a class, we're going to have a huddle. But these are just the same principles that have formed actual communities out there in the world throughout history.
I don't think anyone's made me think that hard in like 90 episodes. I've not overlaid. So like we've overlaid like biological ecosystems to like partner ecosystems. And it really is a fascinating way in like model and modal of thinking. And when you just said archaeology over community, my brain was like, wait, what? I have never thought about it that way. Calling it now, we have to have Kathleen back on the podcast. I want to go down that rabbit hole a lot. I love I've loved this conversation so much. And that's just another example of like, there are fields of study that like we can use to dissect what is happening in phenomena. Like
this work has been done for us.
Right.
Yeah.
Holy cow. I'm still thinking about it. I'm literally struck right now. I'm shook.
No, it's fun to talk about. I mean, I love nerding out on this stuff, right? It's so interesting. And I think it goes back to like, if we just look at this through our marketing lens, we are missing so much opportunity. And there's so many lessons to be drawn from archaeology, from media, from other places to do this all better. That if we're willing to like open our minds about it, I think we can be pretty innovative.
And one of my favorite Ralph Waldo Emerson quotes, a book both opens and closes the mind. Right. So if you've been drinking the Kool-Aid for the demand gen funnel and all of that stuff and waterfall, all that blah, blah, blah for the past 3, 4, 5 years, right. Your mind's pretty closed to a lot of the conversations that we're having when in fact, that's where the best innovation is happening.
Why does a book open and close minds? To your point, it's to what Kathleen's talking about with communities and archaeology. What happens with codification and formalization of things? There's this constant dance. First, it's like messy and everything's kind of informal, and that can only scale so much. And then you get codification and formalization, which allows for scale. But then if you get too much of it, everything gets stifled and it gets killed. And so it's this constant dance.
That's called bureaucracy.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And leadership structures and like, that's the self-organizing principle and coming together. This is where like community and media converge. Like you might have an audience, but until you bring that audience together and they meet in person, like there isn't that social emotional connection. So Yeah, we could go on and on for a long time.
Yeah,
Oh
now
my
I'm getting
gosh.
all hyped up. I'm thinking about James Scott, his work on the concept of legibility. We go all kinds of places. We're definitely going to have to do a round 2 on this. We're going to go deep into the community nerd zone.
Talking multimodal thinking and models and first principles. I didn't realize we could go do that with Kathleen. Like Isaac, we got a friendly here. Isaac and I are known for mixed metaphors and going down first principle rabbit holes.
Love
Our
it.
listeners
Love
are like,
it.
that was a fascinating conversation. I've listened to it 3 times and I got 3 bullet points. Finally, after listening to it the 3rd time, I really liked it. Wow. Kathleen Booth, everybody. Kathleen, thanks so much for joining us today. We gotta figure out how we can do more together on this, because I feel like Pavilion is such a role model company for, community and like how to build a company that way. And I'm sure all of us are waiting with bated breath to see what the next big play is. I mean, you'll continue to drive community value, but I'm sure there's a lot more coming up y'all's sleeves. And then what we've done, we built the media company from the ground up, but that's not our last hurrah. It's not just media company, qua media company, right? Like we're trying to really generate a movement to help people work better together, right? Like our mission statement is to build a world where everyone can win together. And I mean that for every department, right? Marketing, sales, product, CS, all of that. Like if you haven't done the job that your customer is trying to do, then you better be working with someone who has. It's just that simple. So, I won't end with the question, but we got to figure out how to do more together and bring Pavilion and the partnering kind of world together for sure is into 2023.
I would love that. I love what you guys are doing too. So consider me all in.
Amazing. Well, PartnerUp, thank you so much. Isaac, we got any plugs? I think we do got one. Should we talk about kickoff?
Yeah, absolutely. You probably have company kickoffs, revenue kickoffs, sales kickoffs. But we're gonna do a kickoff for 2023 that is for the entire partnerships ecosystem. We're gonna kick off the entire year and really frame up like what the hell just happened in 2022, what is going to be happening in 2023, and how should partnerships people, the partner ecosystem, think about this. So speaking of community, this is a community kickoff, if you can think of it that way, rather than a company kickoff. And January 17th. We are doing this with PartnerStack. Big shout out to PartnerStack. We love partnering with them on stuff. We've done some really great events with them in the past. So I'm really looking forward to it. Jared, you probably have something intriguing to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, where to go, obviously. So partnerkickoff.com. So that's where you can go and get signed up and join us. So this is the partner ecosystem kickoff, totally community related. To Kathleen's point today. So like come kick off the year with us and be like, okay, what the heck are we doing and how are we going to knock the cover off the ball in 2023? Partnerkickoff.com, Partner Hacker, PartnerStack. Let's go. I'm fired up. I'm back on the podcast game. What a way to kick everything off. Kathleen, thank you so much. You were a phenomenal guest and made me think about a lot of things.
Thank you guys for nerding out with me. I loved it.
Absolutely. All right, I'll partner up. Peace out. We'll see y'all next time.